Hi, good afternoon. I'm Isaiah Burr, and I'm going to be talking about Plato the Philosopher King. Okay, something to know about Plato: his real name is actually Aristocles, which meant back then best or most renowned. An important thing to know about Plato is probably no single work of Western philosophy has been read by as many people as Plato's Republic. So to set the setting a little bit about Plato is Plato was born 2 years after the death of Pericles, the great architect of the Athenian democracy. So throughout Plato's life, Athens was at war with Sparta, fighting in the Peloponnesian Wars, which lasted for a little more than 20 years and finally ended when Athens surrendered to Sparta. And once the conquered Sparta took power, they set up a system of leadership called under the group of nobles known as the 30, which took the place of the democracy. And something to know was that Plato's family were members of the Select 30 group. And members of the 30, they failed in their efforts to restore rule by an elite-based class based on bloodlines rather than on character or wisdom. Their reign was short-lived and lasted only about 8 months, and then democracy was reinstated. However, Plato had very little love or had very little hope for both the democracy and for the 30 because of what they did to Socrates, as you can see in this quote. Of course I saw in a short time that the 30 made the former government look in comparison like an age of gold. Among other things, they sent an elderly man, Socrates, a friend of mine, who I should hardly be ashamed to say was the justest man of his time, against one of the citizens. Their purpose was to connect Socrates to their government, whether he wished or not. When I observed all this, and some other similar matters of importance, I withdrew in disgust from the abuses of those days. So Plato became increasingly discouraged by both the mob and the elite. The mob, represented by the trial at Socrates' trial, was irrational and dangerous, and it was swayed very easily by sophistic appeals to emotion and not by reason. However, ruled by the elite, represented by the behavior of the 30, was cruel, self-centered, and greedy. So Plato concluded that the average person lacks wisdom and self-restraint. So after the revolt of the 30 and the execution of Socrates, Plato left Athens and wandered for nearly 12 years, studying in various places. Around the age of 40, he built the academy, and Plato built the academy because no present government was suitable for philosophy. The academy was established as a philosophical retreat, isolated from the turmoil of Athenian politics and safe from the fate of Socrates. So we're going to move forward into Plato's theory of forms, and I'm going to address very quickly why Plato made this theory, or attempted to make this theory. And Plato attempted to develop a theory of knowledge that could refute sophistic skepticism and moral relativism. Plato believed that if he could identify and articulate the difference between mere opinion and genuine knowledge, it would then be possible to identify the structure of an ideal state based on knowledge and truth rather than mere appearance of truth and personal whim. So Plato concluded that the solution to the basic problem of knowledge lay in acknowledging that both Pericles and Parmenides were partially correct in their efforts to characterize reality. Pericles asserted that the one is some kind of orderly cycle or process of change. He said that change alone is unchanging. Parmenides, in contrast, referred to the one as being. Parmenides argued that being is perfect and complete or whole. It cannot be moved or changed. Parmenides' being is immaterial. It is the being of the visible cosmos, immobilized and to a great extent purified, but still clearly recognizable. So Plato believed whatever is true is always true, therefore whatever is relative and always changing cannot be true. Truth and knowledge can be found in another realm of reality, the level of being that Parmenides tried to characterize. Plato believed that this second reality, although closely related to the world of becoming, existed independently of it. So the Platonic forms, as you can see in the definition, are independently existing, non-spatial, non-temporal somethings known only through thought and cannot be known through the senses. So the Greek word for forms is idios, and is sometimes translated as idea. Thus, it is tempting to think of forms as mental entities that exist only in our minds. But Plato insisted that the forms are independent of any minds. So to try to avoid confusion, some philosophers translated eidos as archetype or essence. So according to Plato, forms are universal types or kinds that somehow exist outside of space and time. This physical world contains particular instances of the various universal forms. Today we might call the forms abstract objects. Plato considers such abstract objects more real than the concrete physical ones. So an example the book gives is about redness, and you have the picture of the red rose and the pink rose. And the book goes on to say that there is only one form of redness. Although there can be virtually infinite number of particular things that share some element or degree of redness, the essence of pure redness is pure. But redness, the form, is always the same regardless of any changes that occur in some particular object. When, for example, a red rose fades to a pale pink, its participation in the form red decreases. There is, however, no decrease in the form redness. So Plato was saying that there is red, and red is red. And there might be a flower that is red, and then may wither and turn to pink. But that does not mean that the form red changed from red to pink, but rather the physical object that took the form of red changed, but the actual form red did not change. So there's another example about two glass beads, that there cannot be two identical glass beads. Because although they may be very similar, the two beads can never occupy the exact same space, therefore there can never be two identical beads. So next we're going to be talking about the allegory of the cave. And there's a brief clip that I want you guys to see that I was showed earlier this week in my church history class.
Imagine prisoners that have spent their entire lives chained deep inside a cave. They have been chained so that they cannot see behind themselves, and they are forced to stare endlessly at the cave wall in front of them. Behind them a fire is burning, and between the prisoners and the fire is a raised walkway. Now imagine that each day a menagerie of objects crosses the walkway. Animals, and people carrying their wares to market. Their shapes create an intricate shadow play on the wall in front of the prisoners. This is the only world that the prisoners have ever known. The shadows and the echoes of unseen objects. Now, imagine that the prisoner is released. After some time adjusting to the blinding light, the freed prisoner will begin to experience the world outside of the cave for the very first time. And it is like nothing he could have ever imagined. With this new perception of the world, the man will of course want to return to his friends to share his incredible discoveries. But the prisoners cannot recognize their old friend. He appears as all things do. His voice is a distorted echo, and his body is a grotesque shadow. They cannot understand his fantastic stories of the world outside of the cave. To them, it will never exist. This, of course, does not make the world outside of the cave any less real.
Okay, so the allegory of the cave, to sum up very quickly, it pretty much it describes the human condition, that we are all in shadows, that we have yet to understand the true good or see the sun, which is the symbol for the true good, and the other simile, the simile of the sun. The sun is the true good, its truth, its knowledge, and its pure essence. Therefore, once one of us experiences or gets to know the truth and the true good, it is an innate or an inherent responsibility on that person to go back into the shadow realm, into the room, into the cave where others have yet to experience that, and try to share with them and impart the knowledge we have discovered. Socrates goes on to say that you will most likely be met with scorn and with disapproval because the other people that you are explaining it to have yet to discover and experience the true good. Therefore, they cannot comprehend what you are saying. They are plagued by shadows. They are in the imagination realm, or they are in the the form, the realm of becoming, rather than in the realm of being. And as we move on, we're going to be talking about Plato's ideal society. And Plato's ideal society deals with Plato's ideal society deals with two particular forms of morality that lead on to his philosopher king's society. The instrumental theory of morality means that we do things in order to get something else. So, fathers tell their kids to listen to them to be good because people respect people who do good things, and you'll get a good reputation. By contrast, Plato believes in the functionalist theory of morality, which means that we all have a particular function in life that once we find it and we are able to fulfill it, we will be happiest. And this leads directly into Plato's ideal philosopher king society, where there are three types of people. So Plato goes on to identify four cardinal and basic virtues. The virtue of temperance is important for the worker class, but not necessary for all classes of people. Courage is the essential virtue of the warrior class. In the individual, courage is a quality of will that provides a person with stamina and energy. Wisdom is a virtue associated with the guardians and the rational part of the soul. Justice is the result of the other three cardinal virtues. Is excellence a function for the whole? So what this means is Plato believed that if each three classes of society, worker, warrior, and guardians, work together to fulfill their particular and specific roles in society, then they will have a happier society. Because according to functionalist theory of morality, the person happiness depends on conformity to our natural function as active beings. In other words, only virtuous people can be happy. And the Greeks viewed happiness as more of a matter of personal satisfaction. Happiness was the result of living a fully functioning life. It involved balance and wholeness. And the reason why Plato had a problem with democracy was because Plato believed that democracy came out of oligarchy, the rule of a wealthy few. Because the chief aim of the oligarchs is to get rich, they create a constitution and a type of government that encourages the acquisition of property. But just having property isn't enough. Plato asked, does an oligarchy change into democracy because of lack of restraint in the pursuit of its objective of getting as rich as possible? So to sum up, Plato rejected democracy as unjust because rule by the majority usurps the rightful rule of the guardian class. The result is an excess of liberty and rule by impulse, appetite, and emotion, in which all classes suffer. Democracy violates the principle of functional order and rule by reason. According to Plato, the excessive liberty found in democracies contains the seeds of tyranny, and a type of government in which all power rests in a single individual. The tyrant, the most imbalanced type of personality. Plato goes on to say that a tyrant is always a slave to his own strong passions and desires. An individual who is controlled by drugs or lust is obviously a slave, but so is the politically powerful leader who is a slave to his own lust for power and domination. Once again, things are not as they initially appear. What looks like freedom is in reality lack of control. What looks like power is in truth a form of enslavement.